What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we are looking at another random magic card. If you enjoy this show, I actually stream over on Twitch as well, twitch.tv/HamHawks42. I'm trying something a little bit different, putting that at the top, seeing if it makes a difference. I don't know, but come give me a follow. I'd really appreciate seeing you out there. Anyway, so magic cards. We're going to look at one specific one, and I'm going to talk about it for way too long. Now, I'm on gatherer.com right now. I'm going to go ahead, gatherer.wizards.com, sorry. Go ahead and hit that random card button. And today we are looking at Wingrattle Scarecrow. All right. So this is a common from Shadowmoor. Shadowmoor? Wow, who says that? Shadowmoor, one of the ones from the Innistrad block. It's the one of the spooky sets. You know what I'm talking about. All right. So Wingrattle Scarecrow. It is a 2/2 artifact creature for 3, and that's 3 generic. It's good old-fashioned artifact. When so okay, Wingrattle Scarecrow has flying as long as you control a blue creature. Okay, Wingrattle Scarecrow. When Let me try that one more time. Wingrattle Scarecrow has persist as long as you control a black creature. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so here we have two really interesting abilities, and this card this is interesting. I like it. So this is a cool design space. So this particular card is such that it is an artifact creature. It is absolutely it is generic mana. You can put it in any deck you want. However, if Wingrattle Scarecrow is surrounded by blue creatures, it becomes a flying creature. Okay, so it has wings all of a sudden. That's pretty neat. Then if it has, if you have black, it has persist. Now, if you're not familiar, persist is an ability where when this creature dies, bring it back onto the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. And you can only do that if it doesn't have a -1/-1 counter on it when it dies. So it comes back as so in this case, it would come back as a 1/1, and then when it died, it would die for real. So interesting. Persist is one of those really cool abilities where you can get a lot of interesting scenarios, a lot of interesting uses out of it. But it's not. I don't know. It's interesting. Let's just say that it's very interesting. So yeah. So Wing Rattle Scarecrow. It's funny. The community rating on this one is really quite dismal. It's just a little above 2 stars. It's almost 2.5 stars, but not quite. Yeah. Um, and I can kind of see where they're coming from. Now, this is a common. So I would imagine that this is kind of like a mid to late pick in like a later pick in a draft is not terrible. Like it's one of those where it's like, okay, it can go in a lot of things, so it's fine, I guess. And if you happen to be running blue, okay, it's going to be a flyer some of the time. But the other thing about that is and cards like this that require a certain board state in order to become active in some way. So a 2/2 with flying and persist for 3 is a decent creature. Like that's not bad. That's a good rate. It has combo potential because persist allows for that. So that's all right. There's some fun things you can do there. So it's not. I don't know. So it's not like that wouldn't be bad. However, this particular creature, it doesn't have those abilities just stapled onto them. You have to jump through some hoops in order to get those. And the truth is, having to jump through hoops and then maintain that jump. That was a weird metaphor extension, but you know what I mean. If you have to keep those other creatures on the battlefield in order to continue these effects. Yeah, I mean a 2/2 for 3 with flying and persist is not good enough to merit that kind of hoop jumping. Um, yeah, and then you don't even get it unless you're running a blue-black deck and you're already ahead in the game or you already have an established board presence. So, I mean, you have the possibility of doing some instant speed chicanery with this where you like cheat in um, like a flash blue creature in order to lift it off the ground to intercept a blocker. Like that kind of thing does exist here. So you get some lines of play that you might be able to use that you wouldn't otherwise because of these abilities. So that's something, I guess, but is it enough to make this card decent? Like, and I'd say no. Um, but I mean, it's a common. So this is every set seems to have the common artifact, like crap pack. I don't feel awful about it. Pick 7, for limited, and this appears to be the one from Shadowmoor. I would be shocked if anybody was running anything in constructed formats that ran this. Actually, I'd be surprised if any deck ever in any format has ever run this, aside from limited. I mean, I'm sure there are some commander decks out there where people are doing some fun things with persist, and they just need a critical mass of persist creatures. So fine, it says persist on the card, throw it in there. Like, I'm sure that exists. I'm sure it's out there. Like if I went to EDH Rec right now, I'm sure there are, I don't know, maybe 100 commander decks that are running this. I'm sure there's a use for it, but 90% of the time it's just not there. And part of the issue actually that I have with this particular design is the fact that you can remove the other creatures in order to eliminate those effects. The ability to just like, so that persist. You have to have a black creature on the battlefield when this dies. I mean, they can die simultaneously. That would work okay. But if the person has targeted removal, they can just kill the black creature first, and then Wingrattle Scarecrow just dies, and it doesn't come back. So that's pretty weak. The one thing that you can do is with persist and creatures like Grumgully that give +1/+1 counters when they come back into the battlefield, that is a beautiful combination effect, because when you have two counters that are opposite one another, specifically -1/-1 and +1/+1, they actually cancel each other out. So if something has a -1/-1 counter on it and you put a +1/+1 counter on it, you actually just erase the -1/-1 counter, and then the card now has no counters, which is really important because persist specifically cares about when it dies if it has a -1/-1 counter on it. Yeah, so that's pretty fun. Now that I think about it too, I really want to look at the wording on the Ozolith, because I wonder if the counter moving off of it onto the Ozolith when it dies would allow persist, like all creatures with persist, to persist indefinitely. Um, yeah, I don't know, but that's interesting. I hope it doesn't work that way, because that's way too easy to abuse. Way too easy to abuse. And I'll tell you right now, Wingrattle Scarecrow is not the persister that I want for that. I want to use Kitchen Finks or Murderous Redcap. Those are the two that I would lean in. Yeah, that I would end up using quite a bit to do that nonsense. And I'm sure people are already out there brewing that up. Of course, we don't actually have our hands on the Ozolith yet in physical paper. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on some Ikoria, because man, playing with it in Arena, it is just as weird as I wanted it to be. I gotta say, I'm kind of here for it. And Mutate is a perfectly strong and fair mechanic. Unfortunately, the companions are not fair by any stretch of the imagination, and so playing fair Magic is a way to just get whipped right now. Um, which is even funnier when you look at cards like Wingrattle Scarecrow. Like there was a time when this was, well, at least okay in draft. Like I don't think it was ever great and constructed, but I don't know. I find it funny. The power creep is very, very real, and few things illustrate that quite like looking at older cards. Although to be fair, the um the equivalent of this, the one that fits kind of that same role in Ikoria, is the, what is it, Adaptive Shimmerer, which is a 5 generic 0/0 that comes into play with 3 +1/+1 counters on it, which is, and I think it has flash too, but that's one of those that's like, it's really like barely playable. So it fits that same archetype. So that it just seems to be a colorless creature that is fine, I guess, in every single set. That just seems to be a go-to space that they just need to, whenever they're building a set. It's like, okay, what is the what's the draft meh creature? Um, yeah, well, I mean, they have a ton of them, of course, at common, but the artifact creature is certainly one of them, and this is yeah, this certainly qualifies. That said, it is a scarecrow, and that's not nothing. Actually, that so never mind. Actually, I retract my previous statement about um, there not being very many decks that can run this, because there is one that I can think of, and that's the Reaper King. If you are running a Reaper King EDH deck, you need this in there, and you need it in there for one very simple reason. There are nowhere near enough Scarecrows in the game to really take advantage of the Scarecrow synergy that that particular commander offers you. And I'll be honest, I don't exactly remember how it works, but I do remember looking at it once going, really? You need Scarecrows? What? And yeah, it's one of those where like it just requires you to have a critical mass of Scarecrows, and there just aren't that many. And so rather than having a deck full of changelings, actually putting some legit Scarecrows in there can be very helpful. And here, just because it says Scarecrow on the card, it's worth it for the tribal synergies. So that's something, I guess. But yeah, I gotta say, if this is in my opening hand of an EDH game, I'm not super jazzed. The other thing that it does with Reaper King is specifically Reaper King is all 5 colors, and so if Reaper King is on the battlefield, this is its best self. So that's kind of fun. Yeah, that's kind of fun, I guess. Now, I would much prefer this card if instead of saying that it gets those bonuses, that gets those abilities, if you have a creature of that color, I would much rather it said if you had a permanent of that color, or if it said if you had a land of that particular type. So if it said, Wingrattle Scarecrow has flying as long as you control an island, and it has persist as long as you control a swamp, that I would be all for. I think that would actually be phenomenal because land destruction is far more rare than creature destruction for million different reasons. Generally speaking, lands don't die in combat. Well, generally speaking, I know animating lands is a thing, but by and large, that would just create the same effect that they're going for. Like, so you need to really be playing Demir if you want this thing to really pop off. But rather than force you to have other creatures on the battlefield, because the main downside, the biggest drawback, is if you are already behind in the game and you top deck this late, that's a really bad feeling. Actually, that's probably why the community rating on this card is so low, is because there have been enough people who were hoping to get this. Um, at a time when they are ahead in the game and as a way of continuing momentum towards a victory, which that it can do. It can do that just fine, but you can't turn around with this. You can't restabilize with this card. Although if you could stabilize a board with this particular card, it wasn't that far gone anyway, and there were a ton of other options that could do it better. So that's the one thing. This card is not very good when you are behind. Because if you're behind and you don't have those other creatures, it suddenly is a 2/2 for 3, which is just a bad value. Just straight up bad value. Um, but, I mean, at the same time, you got the Scarecrow synergies, and it's an interesting design. Like, it's got something going on. So I can definitely appreciate that. So they took the meh common artifact creature and they at least did something with it, and I can appreciate that. It also has really baller artwork, so that's pretty fun. It looks freaking metal. It actually looks like a Led Zeppelin album cover, um, if I do say so. Yeah, it shows the torso of some kind of skeletal being with big tattered wings. Yeah, and it looks like the spinal cord is just kind of drifting to the ground and it's standing up on what appears to be its arms. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. I'd definitely recommend you check it out if you're not watching on the YouTube video. But if you are watching on the YouTube video, hi. All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow, per usual. You guys will see me. You can also see me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/hamhawks42. Thanks so much, and I will catch you next time.